Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Coltas, presiding member for this morning's Metro Outer Development Panel meeting. Item 1 on this agenda is to declare the meeting open, and I'll do so at 9:33 a.m. In doing so, I acknowledge we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia. Pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Act, Planning and Development Assessment Panel Regulations 2011, and it is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panel Regulations. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. At the meeting today, the panel consists of, for City of Cockburn, myself as presiding member, Councillor Tom Weidenbach from the City of Cockburn, and Councillor Taryn Dewan from the City of Cockburn. Also to my left, Francesca Lafante, Deputy Presiding Member, and Mr. John Simon, the Specialist Member. And for the City of Wanneroo, we'll have Councillor Wanneroo Smith and Councillor Jackie Humphrey. Item 2, apologies. We have none. Item 3, members on leave of absence. There are none. Item 4, noting of minutes. Previous meetings minutes are available on the DAP website. Moving on to Part B of the agenda, City of Cockburn. There's an application before us. Item 1 on that Part B is, I'll ask all panel members to confirm they've duly considered all of the documentation contained within Part B of the agenda and Part B related information by raising your hand, please. Thank you. Panel members, Item 2, disclosures of interest. We have none at this point. Do any members have a item to declare at all? No. If not, councillors, was this item dealt with the council formally at all? No? Okay, thank you. All right, well, we'll move on to item 3.1, which is a application for proposed showroom and office. We have a presenter here. Are you presenting, both of you together? Okay, take a seat at the table and do your presentation, please. So, Mila Harris and Mr. Mark Reed.
Thank you, presiding member, and good morning, panel members and city officers. My colleague Mark and I, Mila Harris, are representing the applicant this morning in support of the proposed showroom and office development at 2 Merino Entrance, Cockburn Central. We are pleased to receive the city's responsible authority report and recommended to approve this application subject to conditions. We thank Gail and Riley at the City of Cockburn for their collaboration and engagement through the application process. The proposal is suitable for the context of this locality. The land uses are permitted under the city's planning framework, and development has been designed in a manner to a prominent entrance statement into the industrial precinct. In relation to the proposed conditions, we have reviewed the conditions in the city's RAR and largely support the recommendation and recommended conditions. We do request condition 10 is deleted. Condition 10 requires approximately 11 to 12 verge trees to be planted prior to initial occupancy. The landscape plan submitted with the application proposes 9 trees on the subject site. 6 of those trees are located in the landscaping strip along the street frontages. The proponent is agreeable to working with the city to provide appropriate verge landscaping and trees. However, queries the practicality of planting an additional 11 to 12 verge trees directly adjoining the landscaping strip on the subject site, which already does propose 6 trees. We have discussed this matter with the city in advance to the DAP meeting and appreciate the opportunity to do so with Gail and Riley. The city is agreeable to delete condition 10 and address the combined planting of trees across the subject site and verge through condition 9, which requires detailed landscaping plans prior to the issue of a building permit. We respectfully ask the panel to approve this application and resolve to delete condition 10 accordingly. We thank you for your time today, and I would be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Miller. Panel members, any questions? Councillor Ewan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. What page number are you referring to when you say condition 10? I can't see on my thing, so if you can please help me there.
Page 3 of the city's RAR. I don't have the page reference in the entire agenda with me.
Because the agenda that I have doesn't have any page numbers on, 1 to 10. But anyway, regardless of that, the question that I have is, of course, regarding the entry doors, which are facing the awning or the car park. And there was an objection raised by the city of Cockburn. What do you have to say about that?
I wouldn't say that it was an objection raised by the city. It was a variation to one of their policy requirements. We worked with the city very closely prior to lodgement of this application in relation to the layout of this development. It is a hire business, so we do have a display area. We've located that internally, put the building closer to the street. That's actually sleeves and screens the view of those tenant areas. So that internal access way actually provides a better connection to the car parking that we have on the northern boundary.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the presenters? If not, panel members, do you have any questions of the city staff? Yes. Francesca?
Thank you. I have a question for city staff, 2 questions actually. I note that it's particularly in relation to a couple of conditions. One is a request for removal of condition 10, noting that condition 9 deals with landscaping. The details of the verge are addressed through the advice note H. Are you satisfied that condition 9, as worded, suitably addresses the inclusion of the verge planting treatments as well as trees?
Thank you. Yes, we are satisfied. As the presenters had mentioned in their deputation, we did meet prior to this meeting just to discuss the removal of that condition. Just by way of background, so the numerical value that was arrived at, the 11 to 12, is a function of our street tree local planning policy, which prescribes 1 tree per linear length of street boundary essentially. But as the proponent had kind of mentioned when we had met with them, there were just some couple of constraints around sight lines, around the length of the truncation. So we recognised that the number that was required under the condition may not have been practical in this sense. Those discussions can essentially happen offline, and we don't think they're determinative with respect to the application before us. So we were comfortable that that can just be captured by the requirement for a new landscaping plan prior to building permit. So we have no concerns with the deletion of that condition.
Thank you. My second question relates to condition 4. I haven't seen this type of condition as a general condition on planning applications. It is quite general. It refers to the premise shall be kept in a neat and tidy condition at all times by the owner occupant to the satisfaction of the city. Can you explain that a bit further? Typically, we see things like you can't use the parking area for storage, landscaping to be maintained as per the plan, detailed explained as per, maintained as per the plan. This is quite vague. I understand what you're trying to say, but could you explain what predicated this particular condition and why on this site, given the RA appears to be quite positive about the whole proposal, including its street presence?
Yeah, thank you. Look, this is a condition that the city applies pretty consistently with most development applications. I've never really had it queried before, but essentially the intent behind the condition is to, once the proponent or the developer moves on and new operators, move in, this could be 20 years in the future when we're all no longer involved in the proposal. We just wanted to have a statutory condition that captures any unforeseen situations in which the site falls into disrepair. Maybe, as you mentioned, it could be instances where the car parks are being used for storage or the landscaping becomes untended to. So it's just an ability for the city to, from a statutory perspective, ensure that the site's well maintained, especially given that this is such a prominent location in terms of the it being an entry site into the industrial estate. So yeah, this is a standard condition that we apply to almost all development applications. But if there's an alternative that's potentially more specific, like no use of storage in the car park or the landscaping needs to be maintained or something like that, I'm happy to have those discussions. But yes, it is a standard condition.
Well, typically, so I suppose that leads me on the next point. I can understand the intent of the city. There are mechanisms through other pieces of legislation in terms of unsighted sites. Condition 9 just says prior to building permit, a detailed landscaping plan shall be submitted and approved by the city. Would words such as "and to be maintained" in accordance for the life of the development, something along those lines, which actually reflects the street itself, the indications that you referred to?
Yeah, thank you. I think the intent that you're achieving there may be captured by proposed condition 11, subject to the rewording, the renumbering, which is prior to the initial occupation of the building hereby approved, all landscaping shall be installed, reticulated and irrigated in accordance with the approved plan and maintained thereafter to the satisfaction of the city. So we'd be pretty comfortable that that's captured by that condition.
Thank you. That was my question.
Any further questions? Mr. Syme, you had a question?
No, that's been covered.
Yeah. I do have a comment to make on condition 4. Neat and tidy. We have raised this. This panel has raised that with the City of Cockburn before. Neat and tidy is a fairly subjective statement. I know the applicant hasn't queried it, but it's one of those conditions that is fraught with a bit of uncertainty in the neat and tidy, as I said, is a subjective thing. Condition 2, of course, stipulates that the development to be carried out in accordance with approved plans. Well, the approved plans are the landscaping, which has got to be maintained in perpetuity, as you've said. The approved plans show parking areas, display areas, etc. Any variation from that, of course, you've got the Planning and Development Act that you can, the provisions of that, you can enforce the development to be maintained accordingly. I think probably some of the areas you're looking at, maybe if the bitumen or the hard stand gets broken up, you'll get some, you might be able to enforce the maintenance on that. So having said that, I don't have a problem with the condition other than it's a bit uncertain, and if you can come up with some stricter wording on these conditions in future, maybe that would assist. But if no one's objecting to it, I'll just make those comments. So thank you very much. Any further question of the council officers or presenters? Councillor Dewar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I just want, this question is for the City of Cockburn or the proponent, whatever, who can answer that. I can't see anything on the disability access in terms of the entry to the showroom. Is it taken care of by the Australian standards, or is it not needed? I just want some clarification, please.
Council staff should be able to deal with that, I think, under the building codes.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Delman. You are correct. At a development application stage, often those construction requirements under the building codes might not be reflected in the plans or detailed in the development application. But those will certainly be taken into consideration once the proponent submits a building permit, where they will be required to demonstrate how they adhere to any disability and access requirements of the building codes. Generally it's sort of out of the remit of a planning application to go into that level of detail, unless there is some kind of design aspect to the proposal that can be identified at the planning stage, which would make it next to impossible for them to adhere to those requirements. Then we may pick that up at the planning stage. But in this preliminary part of the process, we usually wouldn't go into that level of detail. But before the city issues a building permit, those will be checked for compliance. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
No
you.
more.
Any further questions?
No.
If not, thank you, presenters. We can now move into debate on the item or discussion on the item as a panel. In order to do so, I would like to have a mover and seconder to the recommendation. Mover, Councillor Dewan. Seconder, Councillor Weidenberg. Councillor Dewan, speak to the item, please. Mover.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, this is a development that will assist City of Cockburn to obviously expand its business blueprint, which is growing as rapidly in other areas as well. The proposal meets all the planning acts, legislations, and town planning scheme 3 as well. Hopefully it will bring in more employment and opportunities for the local community. So I would expect this panel to please support that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Weidenberg, please.
Yeah, I'll echo Councillor Dewan's comments. I think it's a sensible development in an appropriate area. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't go ahead.
Thank you. Other panel members wish to speak to the item? Yes.
I will speak to the item. I am supportive of the proposal. The proposal is consistent as per the raw details with the planning framework, the zoning and the objectives. I'm satisfied that the design and its orientation, including various treatments on the street, are consistent with both the scale and the context of the site. I would, however, like to, at this juncture, move Amendment 1. Amendment 1 is condition 10. It is the verge tree planting. I am moving an amendment to delete condition 10. And my reasoning is that it's essentially a duplication of condition 9, and that in particular verge treatments and details are required and set out in advice note H, and that includes the provision of verge treatments and verge landscaping on the existing verge.
Okay, having moved an amendment, do I have a seconder for that? Yes, Mr. Syme, wish to speak to it?
Only briefly, look, I agree with the comments made by the mover, and it's agreed by the city. Straightforward.
Okay, anyone wish to speak for or against the item? If not, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Yes,
Thank you. I have Amendment 2. My Amendment 2 is deletion of condition 4, that the premises shall be kept in neat and tidy condition at all times by the owner occupier to the satisfaction of the city. The reason for my amendment is that I don't think it is necessary. I think it's somewhat vague and open to interpretation, and is a fairly substantive statement. There are obligations for this proposal to comply, and any other operator to comply with the proposal as approved for the life of the occupation of the development, and that includes the provision of landscaping plans. There are also mechanisms within the legislation for compliance actions to be taken, and that includes where areas within the site are used for purposes not designated on the proposal. So accordingly, I do not think that it is required, and I've given the reasons in terms of the condition language. If there is a seconder, that is my amendment.
Okay, can I call for a seconder, please? I'll second it to Councillors.
Can I ask a question to the city at this juncture?
Yes, we'll speak to the item if you wish to, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I do understand the proposer's amendment that if it is taken care of, the tidiness and the clarity and cleanliness of the site, if it's a repeat, that's fine. But I want to ask the city, what is the logic of putting this condition in the first place? Have they experienced issues within the city for businesses which have not kept their site tidy and created problems? And if this amendment would, I guess, cause any implications in terms of implementing any measures from the city, if the city can please answer that, that would be nice. Thank you.
I'll allow that just to clarify something for Councillor Dillon. Council staff, briefly.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dewan, for your question. Look, we take the point that there are other mechanisms that the city can take from a compliance perspective or an enforcement perspective. I guess the intent of the condition is that it just makes it clear that the upkeep and maintenance of a property is a minimum expectation of the city to whomever ends up occupying this at any point in the future. To put it frankly, having something as a condition does allow us to maybe go in with a bit more of a legislative backing to it and pursue an operator or a landowner under the powers of the Planning and Development Act. Without an express condition, I don't know how successful, for example, a prosecution may be if we were intending to take it that far, if a landowner refused to adhere to it. There are other mechanisms under like the local law, for example, in terms of keeping an area safe, or if something were to fall into dilapidation and become dangerous, then we can intervene in that sense. But I guess the intent of the condition is just to establish that maintenance of a property is an expectation of the city from a planning perspective. But given that there are other mechanisms that can assist us with compliance, I guess we don't really have that much of an objection to the condition being removed.
Thank you. Sorry, I think you've answered the question. Thank you.
No worries.
Any further questions? Any comments? Okay. Well, anyone speak on the item? Mr. Syme.
Yes, look, I'm with the city on this one, and there's two elements to this. One, there's a legal aspect to it, and this doesn't really get into the legal aspects of it because it's quite clear that there are plenty of mechanisms, or there are mechanisms available to the city in extremis to attend to something where something is fallen into considerable disrepair. I think the more useful part of this is to make it clear that and make it upfront that the city actually has that ability to pursue things if it really needs to. So from a creative, that's not a legal issue, it's more of a communication issue, if you like, or a political one. And I think it's useful to have that there as a summary of what powers the city may exercise if it needs to, in the really unlikely event that it would need to. These things don't happen very often. So I am with the city on this one. I think it doesn't hurt to have in there, and it's probably useful if it is there. So I don't accept excluding it.
Thank you. Any further comment on the amendment? If not, do you wish to close the debate on? No. All right. I'll put the amendment 2 to delete condition 4. All those in favour? 3 against. 2. The amendment is carried 3-2. Thank you. Right. Francesca, you just further on there.
Settle my comments and proposals.
Okay, and everyone else has spoken other than me. I believe. Or did you want to speak? To
Oh,
the
substantive issue that briefly, this is the sort of use and the sort of location where it's entirely appropriate. It's consistent with the planning framework. I think the changes to the framework that are there are minor, and I think we can approve this easily. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Speak to the item and just say that it does, the use is the permitted use under the scheme and the mixed business zoning. There's really only a couple of items that need attention in terms of the facade treatment, which is addressed by condition 16, and further attention to landscaping, and that's addressed by condition 9. So all in all, it's a landmark entry statement, and hopefully it will be treated as such by the proponents in perpetuity. Therefore, I'll close debate by asking Francesca if she wants to do that.
I was not the mover of the substantive.
Oh, sorry. Okay, it was Councillor Dewar. You wish to close debate on the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's nothing much to add other than the proponent obviously goes by the building codes and the conditions, etc., and works cooperatively with the city in terms of getting this development as quickly as possible, because even though there are 4 years given on the development approval, it might be worthwhile for everybody to sort of bring it to fruition as quickly as possible. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. The debate's closed on the item. Now I'll put the item as recommended and as amended. All those in favour? Carried 5-0. It's unanimous. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next part of agenda item 4, Form 2 development applications on the part B now.
Sure.
Thank you.
And item 5, set reconsiderations. There are none. Thank you, Councillor Weidenbach and Councillor Dewan, for your attendance, and also City of Cockburn officers for your assistance in the matter.
Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you. Okay. We move now to part C of the agenda, City of Wanneroo, and we welcome Councillor Smith and Councillor Hunting, and also to officers Mr. Bowring and Aaron Jones. Item 1, I will confirm that all panel members have duly considered all of the documentation contained within part C of the agenda and part C related information. By show of hands, please.
We just got Councillor Huntley's got an issue with her camera, so she just needs to declare it out loud.
Okay. Councillor Huntley, could you notify? We can't see you.
I'm just going to go back on my phone. The camera, there's a button here that switches the camera off, but they've failed to actually show you what it looks like. So I have no idea how to get this back on.
That's all right. Well, I'll take that as a yes, that you have duly considered all of the documentation, etc. Okay. Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. I have none at this stage. Do any of the panel members have an interest to disclose at all? If not, councillors, was this item discussed at council at all? No, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 3, which is the application for proposed tavern and amusement parlour at Key Largo Drive, Parkson. We have presentation from Mr. Peter Simpson from PTS Town Planning in support of the recommendation. Advise that you have 3 minutes.
I'll only take about 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Peter Simpson, PTS Town Planning. With me, I've got Andrea from Matthews and Scavali Architects. And I think online is Jacob. I don't know whether he's still there.
Yeah.
Jacob Barton from WSP in terms of traffic. We don't really have anything to add to the RAR. This is obviously a new entertainment offering coming to Australia. It's the first one in Australia. You probably would have read about it in the paper yesterday. It was in the West property section. and we're comfortable with the conditions and the recommendation of the RAR. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Councillors and panel members, do any of you have questions of the presenters? No. Councillor Huntley?
Yeah, just check. Yeah. Yes. No, I don't have any questions at this stage. It's all looking pretty good at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Francesca?
I have a question to applicants, the same question to officers. I know the proposal is for tavern and amusement arcade. Can you advise whether they are combined over the whole of the site, both those activities? Thank you.
Yes, so the design has sort of the bar tavern area up front with the amusement area at the back. So it is a combined whole site, but we're trying to work out what land uses would best describe what is actually proposed to take place. And that's why we went with the tavern and the amusement bar.
Great, thank you. I have the same question to officers, and I'll come to that when we get a chance. It's slightly different wording. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other questions of the presenters at this stage? If not, I'll open up questions of the City of Wanneroo officers.
So my question to the officers, thank you, Chair, is a similar question to I've just asked of the applicant. And I suppose my more simplistic extension of that for yourselves is, can the facility, in the event that the matter was approved today, moving forward, can the facility operate solely as either a tavern or an amusement area, or must they in perpetuity be combined?
It's an interesting question. The application itself didn't really delineate area A or B for the two uses. So quite potentially it could operate as either or both. I would read it that way.
And so further to that, my question in the context of that response, thank you for that, is that the RAR sets out a lot of information relating to the parking, calculation of parking, and the reduction of parking, noting that the proposal is supported and there's been reasons set out in the RAR why you support the parking variation, particularly for on-site combination of parking as well as operating hours. Do those comments still stand in the context of my first question, a la exclusive use of the site for one of those activities, i.e. the whole site being a tavern or the whole site being an amusement centre? Does that alter, or are there any matters that we should be taking into consideration in the context of that?
Thank you for the question. I think in terms of on a face reading, if you said it was one or the other or both, that may not bear out in practice because the car parking itself is based on the distribution of the uses. So it's across the site. So there is, in my view, in order to comply with the recommended approval, it would need to be operating both uses simultaneously to as outlined in the application. If that was to substantially change, that would change the nature of the parking demand, which would, in my view, may require a further development approval to modify the operation of the uses in accordance with an approval. So if you take my meaning, the approval for the range of uses is based on the detail in the application and the way the car parking has been calculated and set out in the application and in the determination. So if that substantially changes, i.e. it becomes all tavern, that would be a material change of use essentially, and which would affect the assessment and the calculation of car parking for the use and would require a further development approval.
And could you clarify for me in the conditions that you've set out here, how you would perceive that to be managed or in the event that that occurs? Because here the condition 3 says a maximum of 800 patrons are permitted within the tavern and amusement parlour at any one time, again, combining the two together. And it goes down further about operating hours. It refers to both, but I don't see any any material that matter you raised.
On that, and that would be, yes, through a compliance process. If we were, a parking problem did arise, which I think would be the main cause of any issue with the operation of the use, then through a compliance process, we would most likely look at the way in which the premises is operating. Is it operating as a bona fide amusement parlour and tavern, or is it operating just as one of those uses? And then seek to enforce the operation of the use in accordance with the approval.
Thank you for those comments.
Okay, I'll just have a quick question following on from that. The plans would have to be approved also through liquor licensing, so any change to internal layout will probably draw some of those issues out, wouldn't they, Greg?
Most definitely it would, yes.
Okay, thank you. John, did you have a question? Councillors, any questions of the officers? Okay, if not, then we'll move into discussion and debate on the item. To do so, I need a mover. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Smith, seconded Councillor Huntley. Thank you. Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you. The application seems straightforward to me, and it will, I guess, be a bit of variety for up our way, and maybe draw a few people up our way as well who are curious about Dave and Buster's. So happy that we're filling in an empty place again. So, yep, happy to proceed.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Huntley?
Yeah, very similar comments. That was a Good Guys and has been empty for a little while now. And I think it's appropriate where it is. It's far enough away from the shopping centre and it's tucked away, and it is in a back road, although it's sort of a major road. And I can't see it will have any knock-on effect on the town centre or anything. So I think it's a good place to put it, and I think it's obviously it follows all the compliance, so I'm happy with it.
Thank you. Other panel members wish to speak to the item?
I will speak to the item.
Yes.
I am supportive of the proposal. I thank the city officers for their explanation around the land use and the two activities that are occurring. From my perspective, the proposal as provided in the details before us is consistent with the planning framework, the scheme and the zone objectives. The reuse of an existing facility is appropriate, and I'm comfortable that the information provided means that these two elements can operate together, and that they are positive. They are positive in the area with no impact on the town site. In terms of amenity impact, I'm satisfied with the material that's been provided that has addressed particularly noise in the acoustic reports and has achieved an acceptable outcome in relation to those matters. And also satisfied that the parking on site, as provided in the report, which is the combination of shared parking on site for this use, and that includes both the mix of uses and the difference of operating hours within that complex, and overall the proposal is supported.
Thank you. Mr. Simon.
Briefly, yes, this can be supported. I think it is consistent with the planning framework. Its use is in a location in the shopping centre, which is an appropriate one. The potential issues of noise and amenity and so on, I think, have been properly addressed. So I think this can be supported.
Thank you. Finally, I'll speak to the item. The proposed use is appropriate, and the district planning scheme number 2 in the commercial zone, and the parks and activity centre structure plan. The objections on parking, traffic, noise, and the proximity of the premises to sensitive land uses have been addressed through the acoustic reports and the parking assessments, and I think it will be an acceptable proposal in that locality. So I'm supporting it, and I have the mover to close debate on the item, please, Councillor Smith.
Happy to proceed. Happy with everything that's been said. Thank you.
Okay, and that being the case, I'll put the item as recommended in the row. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the balance of the agenda. Item 4, there's no Form 2 DAP applications. Item 5, no Section 31 SAP reconsiderations. Part D, other business. The SAT applications that are currently at foot listed. And item 2, the meeting closure. I'll close the meeting at whatever time it is, 10:13 a.m. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, council staff, and thank you, other panel members. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.